We're going to start straight away with the truth about what's happening in Ukraine, because, of course, over the weekend, the heavily fortified city of Avdiivka fell. Western media still doesn't want to talk about this properly because this is a major setback for the Ukrainian forces, and it follows some particularly vicious fighting on the ground. But the city has gone, and in the disarray that's followed, Russian forces are continuing to move forward. Now, I've always been promoting online reports about the war in Ukraine because there are many channels putting out very good, accurate reports. Today, I felt the best way to deal with the situation of Avdiivka was to use a little bit of film footage from Weeb Union. So I'm going to say thank you very much to that channel. I have identified them on the film clip, but let's hear this channel reporting what has happened in Avdiivka.
Hello, welcome back to another update as we cover the latest developments throughout the front line in the Russo-Ukrainian war. In this, we have a coverage of the situation in Avdiivka, where the Russians have managed to gain full control over the city. The Russians managed to capture about 30 kilometers square, a little more than that, throughout the Avdiivka front. With the capture of the city itself, the citadel area and the coke plant have all been under Russian control as of this moment. The Russians published some geolocated footage which shows them planting their flags around the coke plant area and in the citadel area about there, as you can see in this picture here. So with this geolocated footage, we can confirm that the Russians now have control over the whole city, 100% of it, and the fighting is now moving in a western direction towards Lestashkine. So also reports that they will start operations in the direction of Sheverne, here to the southwest. And with this, we see that the Russians are going to move in a western direction to secure the outskirts of the city and likely create a buffer zone here to the west of Avdiivka through the villages of Berdyivki, Zeneninka, Orlivka, Tonenke, and Sheverne here to the west.
So that was the report. It went on to give much more detail about the battle itself. But of course, a key feature of the battle was it degenerated into utter chaos on the Ukrainian side. Some Ukrainian units surrendered, some Ukrainian units refused to fight. Ultimately, small columns of Ukrainians were retreating to the west across fields with no cover. Particularly unpleasant videos of them being shelled by the Russians or attacked by drones, which we're not going to show on UK column news, but truly horrible for the Ukrainian forces. And of course, this was another fortified city that had been going since 2014. And this is the urban area from which much of the Ukrainian shelling into the Donetsk area, this was the base for it. So this is a massive plus for the Russians, and in the general chaos of that conflict, of the Avdiivka conflict, the Russians are continuing to move out to the west, as Weeb Union has described, to take other smaller villages, fortified villages, and this is bringing them into the heart of the Ukrainian defences to the west. So a major step forward, but let's have a look at how this has been reported. This is the BBC, and the big thing here is that apparently the Ukrainian troops have left the embattled eastern town. So if we just bring up the little banner on screen, we'll see that the BBC takes retreat and surrender and simply tries to relabel it as leave. This is pure propaganda from the BBC. And if we also have a look at the Institute for the Study of War, we've shown on many occasions that the Institute for Study of War maps have been badly out of date on the BBC website. So they haven't wanted to show the Russian progress. But in their latest report, the BBC shows this map. And of course, we notice the tiny scale so that we can't really see what's happening around Avdiivka. But if you look, there is the hatched colour, which they claim is limited Russian military control, and the yellow, which they say is claimed Russian control, but the reality, as you've just seen on your screen, by an amateur reporter is that, of course, the Russians are fully in control, and that's the truth. Alex, I'll just come over to you. I just find it astonishing that the BBC can be so blatant in its manipulation of not only the media and reporting worldwide, but the reports on the war in Ukraine.
How do they get away with it, Brian, is always the question. And I suppose the most sensible answer is they have been in this game for longest. Through both world wars and through the Cold War since, they have expressly had guidelines, both internal and nudged at them by the government, on how to prevent embarrassment in wartime and during proxy wars to His Majesty's government.
Yes, and of course it's going on in Syria, it's going on in other places. But we'd like to just draw your attention back to Admiral Radakin, who, of course, months ago was saying, well, giving his opinion as to how the war was going. Let's go back in time and see what this man was claiming.
This is a dreadful mistake by Russia. Russia will never take control of Ukraine. Russia has strategically lost already. NATO is stronger. Finland and Sweden are looking to join. If you look at the Ukrainian people, they've already defeated the original Russian plans, which were to take the cities inside 30 days and in about 6 weeks take most of the country. That's all stopped, and Russia's had to change its objectives, and it's focusing on the east. So if you come down a couple of levels, there's a tactical battle going on in the east of Ukraine, and that's tough. The Russian machine is grinding away, and it's gaining a couple or 2, 3, 5 kilometers every day, and that's tough for Ukraine. But this is going to be a long fight, and we're supporting Ukraine. Ukraine has shown how courageous it really is, and Russia has vulnerabilities because it's running out of people, it's running out of high-tech missiles, and if you just look at where Russia is at the moment, it's lost about 25% of its combat land effectiveness.
So I'll throw this one at you again, Alex. This man did not know what he was talking about, does not know. He's talking about Russia running out of people and missiles and losing 25% of combat effectiveness. This man simply does not know what he's talking about. And of course, in the background, as we're going to be seeing, his Royal Navy is struggling to keep major ships at sea. What do you think is the matter with this man?
He's had his head spun in some way or other. It's hard for me to put my finger on, but the Wally-like intonation, the loose jaw, just do not produce any resonance with the listener. They're not congruent with his standing. And when you were commanding one of Her Majesty's ships, you would not have taken kindly to a rapidly over-promoted land forces officer assessing the effectiveness of the Royal Navy or your slice of it. Here he is, adducing statistics about combat land effectiveness, which have been produced from where? The bowels of the Defence Intelligence Service, new style, stripped of many of its old specialists. I don't know, because these are, like GDP, very subjective measures. It sounds good, of course, for a few seconds on TV. That's all it's good for.
That's all it's good for, absolutely. And we just end with the true horrors of what's going on in Ukraine, because, of course, as a proxy military, NATO simply wants to pour more people in. And you had found this report on the death of a mobilized person in Odesa, who was actually suffering from epilepsy when he was mobilized. He's since died. And if we bring the banner on screen, we can also see that, of course, the aim is to, the Ukrainians believe that they could get another 500,000 troops, and these will be largely untrained into the field. We'll leave that there. Let's